Hi everyone, this is Austin here, and I'm one of the co-founders at Clarify, and I wanted to quickly walk you through a really cool integration I set up between Clarify and Kondo. If you're not familiar with Clarify, we're a next generation CRM, and if you're not familiar with Kondo, you definitely should be. It's an incredible way to get through your inbox really fast. So if you're not familiar with Kondo, you can jump on over to trykondo.com. I'm not going to show you Kondo too much, but I will show you how to set up a particular feature inside Kondo, and then I'll show you how to connect it here inside of Zapier and what it looks like inside of Clarify. So to start, we're going to actually jump over to Kondo. I'm going to come here. I have a message that I'm going to use to show you guys a little bit later. What I want to do is go to integrations, and so I'm just going to come up here to my inbox, and I am going to go to webhooks. You can navigate this normally if you want. I just know the URL, so I'm going here this way. Now you see I set up this Clarify message sync. So if you don't have one of these, you can create it. I'm going to go ahead and edit ours. You can see here that we have a Clarify message sync. We have a trigger type. We have a URL to enter our Zapier hook, and then a bunch of body data. And you'll notice that I have this set to manual. Manual means every time you want to log a message, it will manually sync when you click the sync button. If you want it to be streaming, you could set it to streaming, and then it's going to sync every time you're getting LinkedIn messages. So I'm going to do manual real quick, and I'm going to click save. Well, don't have to click save because it didn't change anything, but you would if you're doing it that way. So now jumping back over to Zapier, let's walk through each step of how this hook works and what the outcome is. At the very start of the Zapier setup, we're actually going to configure a webhook as the action that fires this whole thing off. That hook that you saw earlier, that's the hook that you're getting here from Zapier. So you come here, you'll get a webhook, and then you'll be able to trigger a response from Kondo. If you haven't done it yet, what I would recommend doing is you go put the LinkedIn URL inside of Kondo, go to a message, click the sync button. I'll show you how to do that at the end of the video if you're not sure, and you'll get a couple of messages here that you can work with. Now, there's a couple steps that I do after this. Some of the problem is that LinkedIn doesn't give us email address, and we don't want to go scraping a bunch of profiles and upset LinkedIn. We saw what happened recently with Apollo for doing that. We also want to be able to look up the person somehow. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to make a request to Apollo, giving the person's LinkedIn handle and trying to look up their email address and any other information we can. If you don't have Apollo, you could try to do this with another data enrichment provider. If you don't have any of those, you could just try it with GPT, and you might get a nice hit. Let me show you the Apollo API call that I make. I come in here and I made a special post request in Zapier. So if you're not familiar with that type, it's just called a webhook by Zapier, and you're going to trigger the action post. This is the catch hook action. This is the post action, meaning you're sending a webhook out somewhere else. You're basically sending an API request. So I hit the URL people/match. I'm getting the first name, the last name, and the LinkedIn handle. And I'm also giving it this value called reveal personal email true. And I'm not going to wrap this in an array. I'm not going to flatten it. And I'm not going to scroll all the way down. The next field here is just my API key. So I'm going to keep that safe by not showing it to y'all. But I have this catch control, no catch. And again, you can start to see the API key if I scroll any further. So I'll keep that out of view for a second. Once you make this request though, you're going to get back a bunch of interesting data about the person. And then what I do is I actually set up a GPT step. I use GPT steps all the time to take kind of a gobbledygook of data and structure it. In this case, I'm giving it other data. I'm giving it LinkedIn data. I'm giving it email, kind of everything that's relevant from the LinkedIn message, because they may have entered their email in the LinkedIn message. They may have, and actually I'm going to go ahead and I saw a little error here that I made. So I'm going to actually go here and data conversation. Where did it go? Latest status. I actually want the whole history in here as well. So I'm giving it the whole history of the conversation with Kondo. I'm giving it the LinkedIn URL, and I'm giving it the emails, both from Kondo if it has it, which it likely doesn't, and then also from Apollo. Throw that all in here, and then I have description, based on the information above, try to extract the company name and the person. I also try to do the same for the domain, and I also try to do the same for email. Now, the reason you need these three things is because you need the company name if you want to associate it with a company record inside the CRM. You need a domain if you want to associate that with the correct web domain and have all your companies created hygienically inside the CRM. And you need the personal email if you want to create the record with email and the LinkedIn address and have that tied to the company. So you can see as I'm kind of working backwards from the conception of the CRM, I need a good record with personal name and domain and email address, and then I'm working back to the company record because I know I'm going to have to create these steps in Clarify. Okay, so I run this, and you can see one of the output here is it just has domain and email and a company name. Great, that's exactly what I wanted. So we have an action called Find Company, and I just click on that, and we have a bunch of other actions as well. You can see here, there's quite a few. I throw the domain in there. I'm not going to create a company because if this gets it wrong, it could just explode your company population with a bunch of bad data. So I'm going to leave that off, and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? If you can't create a company, it's fine. Mark it successful and move on. We're going to ultimately be adding all these records into a list in Clarify anyways. So that's how we'll track them and make sure that we can clean them up later if we need to. So go ahead and test that. It says it's false. Didn't find anybody. Now I'm going to go here and find a person and create a person. Now, before I go on, what you could do if you were really trying to be endeavoring here is you could put an if statement and say, hey, if the domain and the company name are valid, I want to actually force this to create a company. And if not, I don't. In this case, I'm just being a little bit lazy and I'm saying, hey, if it didn't work, it didn't work. Who cares? Okay, so back to the person object. I'm now going to create the person object inside Clarify. I have a bunch of different options here. I'm going to click Find Person. If you find a person, you can actually add them to Clarify afterwards. So you don't have to necessarily create a person or create an object right from the start. You got email address. This is the email address that we're getting from GPT. And the reason we're using this versus Apollo is because we gave GPT the Apollo emails and we gave GPT all of our Kondo data. So if the person mentioned their email in the history, or if they have an Apollo hit, GPT is going to extract that and give it to us. That's the reason why I'm using GPT here. So I give it the first name, the last name, the LinkedIn handle, and I give it the company ID if it has one, and I say create a Clarify person if it doesn't exist. So you don't have to have two actions here, you can just use one. And then the next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a comment. So there are many different ways you could log this data. For example, you could create a custom object and you could log a LinkedIn conversation against it. You could extract some metadata and maybe have like last LinkedIn message with a timestamp on it. In this case, though, that's really complicated. I just want to post the comment, my LinkedIn history with them onto a comment record in Clarify so it appears as part of the activity chain. And then anybody who looks can kind of see the messages that I had and interacted with them. So I go here and I just make a little message called latest LinkedIn Kondo message. I put the conversation history in here. And then the last step is actually add them to a list inside Clarify. So in Clarify, we have this concept of lists. We have both dynamic lists and static lists. In this case, it's a static list because I'm adding records one by one. There's no filter logic or anything like that. And you can see I created this list here. It's a person object and I have my Kondo LinkedIn Zap list. This just makes it really easy for me to find these records later. So if I want to, say I do an outbound campaign with La Growth Machine, and I want to make sure I can go back to those records later, I could do something like that by having a list inside Clarify. Okay, so we're all done here. I'm just going to click Publish, and I'll just say version with Kondo history. Great. And I'm going to jump back over to Kondo real quick, and I'll fire this off so that you can actually see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm here in Kondo. I'm going to show you how to sync this message chain. The other day I had a lightning round on Maven and a bunch of students were reaching out to me and I want to get this message from Joe and our history chain into Clarify because maybe I want to follow up with Joe. So it's really easy. There's two ways to sync this message chain with Clarify. I can either hit this button called Sync Conversation History, or I can just Command K and hit Sync, and boom, there it is. So now I can jump on over into Clarify. Let me just jump back to my record. You can see I have a list of people inside Clarify that I started syncing recently. I'm going to go here to Joe and we're just going to give it a second and there it is. You can see I have my whole message history from my conversation with Joe right inside of Clarify. So this is a demonstration of how easy it is to get your LinkedIn data inside Clarify, and we do it with a simple Zapflow. If you want the template to this, we'll be sharing it, and I would love you guys' feedback and comments on what we can do to improve the partnership.